Okay, welcome everybody. Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the abridged code of Jewish law. Siman Samachay, chapter 65. Up design number 7. So we're discussing the laws of interest, charging interest on loans and various things. It's an extremely interesting chapter. Since we're saying puns. Right. Zayin number 7. Im echad malva moisav l'chaveirei alzman mo. So a person lends money for a certain length of time. I think we may have done this last time or in the middle, but in other words, it had a kedei shachsoi zeh yalvar pam acha. He says, I'm lending it to you. You get a year to pay it back, and on condition that you lend to me whenever. He gives a date. Sach yois zman kazeh, and the time that I get the loan is for either an equal or larger amount of time, right? So in other words, I'm giving you a long time to pay back the loan in exchange that I get a long time to pay back my loan. Or for an equal amount, but for a longer time, right? A larger amount. So either I get a larger amount for an equal length of time or a same amount for a longer time. Zeh ribis gomer. This is total ribis. This is forbidden interest because it's a stipulation. Now, even though you're not paying interest, you're just agreeing to lend the money. But since it's stipulated that either the loan has to be for a large amount or my terms has to be longer, that in itself is considered interest. In other words, I get something out of it. Okay. Right. But if we just said, I'm lending to you on condition that you're going to lend to me in the future, Sach kazeh leman zeh, for the same amount of time, even though I made a condition. So then it depends. Yesh orim shigam ken also. There are those who say this is also prohibited because I'm getting same thing out of it. Yesh orim demuta, and there are those who say it's permissible because at the end of the day I'm not gaining out of it. So says the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, yesh lahachmir, a person should be strict. Don't make these type of conditions. So we're in the middle, chapter 65, number 7. Ach, im loy hisnu kain. But if you didn't make it a condition at the time of the loan, right? I just borrow money. And what happens is, at a later date, the guy comes who I borrowed money from. He wants to borrow from me at some later time, and even though it's motivated by the loan he gave me, I want to be nice to him too. Even though I'm only lending the money because he lent me money. This we can be lenient because it was not a condition of the original loan. As long as it wasn't a condition of the original loan, then there's no problem. Okay. All right. So we're in the middle of that one last time. Number 8, still chapter 65, but number 8, new din. The malva, the guy who's lending the money, he has to be careful not to benefit from the borrower without his knowledge. So in the Gemara, it gives an example of this. If a person used his tools without asking him, right? He just feels I have the right to use his tools because he owes me money, right? You can't do that. As long as the guy still has the money is in his hands, he didn't pay you back. Once he pays you back, if you use something, whatever, that's a separate issue. I mean, you still can't use people's things without their permission. That's a different issue. But over here, while he's still the money, the loan is still outstanding, or part of it is still outstanding, you can't use these things. Now, a fiddle, this is even. But even if he would have done this, if he didn't lend the money, right? In other words, I would have borrowed his lawnmower, even if he didn't owe me money. However, since in this situation he's benefiting from the person that has permission, I didn't ask him to borrow his lawnmower. I'm just taking his lawnmower. Nira, it has the appearance that why am I taking without permission? Because he owes me money. So even though it's not technically ribis, it's not technically interest, but it looks bad. It looks wrong. So since I owe him money, he'll forgive me. He won't protest that I took his thing. Okay, that's if you took without permission. But if you benefit with his permission, mutter, it's allowed if if it's something that I would have used even if I didn't lend him money. So for an example, let's say I regularly borrowed his lawnmower. Now I lent him money. I also borrow his lawnmower. I asked permission. I'm talking about asking permission, so that's not a problem. I just always yes. So they the but if I would never normally borrow the lawnmower, and all of a sudden, oh, he owes me money, so he's going to for sure lend me the lawnmower, then that's something else. But if it's something I would have borrowed otherwise, then as long as I ask permission, there's no problem. As long as it's not something done in public. Because again, doing something in public, let's say for example, I moved into his house. Right? Everyone sees now I'm moving into his house. You know, it looks bad. Right? That's the example in Shulchan Aruch, in the big Shulchan Aruch, you move into his courtyard, or you take his avodim, borrow the avodim. So these kinds of things are more public. But borrowing the lawnmower, you know, it goes in the back of the truck, you know, in the back of the SUV or something. No one really sees it. It's not, and I mow the lawn in my house. No one really knows if I own a lawnmower, or I bought one, or I rented it from who knows where. You know, people don't normally fact check exactly whose lawnmower is whose. So it's not a problem. But if it's something that's public, then it also it looks bad. Okay, number 9. Now this is going to seem funny. It's going to seem funny because there's a very fine line here. There's a very fine line between I'm going to say sucking up, for better word, lack of a better word, to someone because they lent money, and showing decency, appreciation of decency. It's a very fine line. Very fine line. So, for example, you know, there may have been someone who you never really spoke to so much. You didn't really say good Shabbos and shul. I mean, you sat on the other side of the shul once in a while. You know, you never had much to do with him. But when you got stuck, your friends didn't help out, and this guy comes and helps out and gives you a loan. Obviously, you feel a certain appreciation. And you might want to go over and wish him good Shabbos now. But it's not because of the loan. It's because he's a mensch. He was the guy who came and helped. You never knew. You barely knew him before. Now all of a sudden you see he's the guy who cares when the people who you thought were your friends didn't care. So that would be appreciation. Then there's a situation where all of a sudden because someone lent you money. So now you go over, you wish them good Shabbos, or you give them some other honor. In other words, it's not it's not monetary interest, but it's still interest. You're giving him something in exchange for the loan. It can be a fine line, can be a difficult one to navigate, right? So number 9, let's have a look at this. Im lo haya haloiva ragil lahakdim lamal v'sholem b'pam acher. The guy borrowed the money. He wouldn't normally initiate greetings to the person who he borrowed money from at any other time. I never said good Shabbos to him. I never wished him a good morning. Didn't have anything to do with him. Also, lahakdim loy. It's prohibited to now start running up to him, to go up to him and start initiating the greetings. Also, and it's also prohibited to start giving him certain honors. But basic Knesset and Shul, like I'm the Gabbai, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, I'll give this guy every second coin, which would really be a problem if he wasn't a coin, but but let's presume he was. Achar in some other setting, Imlo hayaragel kain gampam acher, if you never did it any other time, right? So you can't start giving people honors and different things.
What about a question?
Yeah.
Okay, this is hypothetical. Okay, suppose in shul there is one coin. Okay,
Yeah.
this guy comes, not the coin, but the fellow that you're talking about now, the borrower and the lender. Okay, let's say the lender or the borrower is the gabbai. The lender is the other coin, or maybe it's the other way around, whichever way. He now becomes the second coin in the shul. By you just giving the first coin all the time, that in itself is a problem, because other people will start wondering what's wrong with the.
Yeah, I mean, I think if a new guy came to town and now they alternate, then that's what would have happened if you didn't borrow the money. So it happened to be you didn't give him a call out beforehand because he only just moved into town right when joined the shul. If he joined the shul because you lent him the money and he wants it, that might be something else. But if you just, if it's two unrelated events, then if you would do what you would normally do, is not a problem. What we're when we're yeah when we're saying here about not when you didn't do it before, what I mean is that he was there. He was around, and you never did anything. All of a sudden he lends you money. Okay, now we're going to do everything for him, or we're going to start. So that's when it becomes interest, not in money terms, but in something else. Yeah, did that answer your question?
Okay.
Yeah. Now, v'chein shar ribis devarim ba'alma also other forms of ribis that are verbal are also a problem. All of a sudden you become his MC, and every time like to call up the most generous, magnificent, the most whatever happens to be, in other words, ribis, loosely interest. I mean, interest really just means financial in English, or some other financial gain. But here, ribis can even be verbal. Shneimah says, Neshech kol dava asher yishach. Interest of anything that he could take as interest. Meaning anything. Afilo dibba asa, even words, is forbidden. If the words are just because of the loan. Just because of the loan. So you can't start praising him in his presence. Now, an interesting chub from Moshe about this. if someone lent money so you could print a safer. Seeing this, what happened? Someone lent someone money to print a safer. So he didn't give money for the printing, right? Some of those people, they give money or they donate money, and you say they make a dedication in the name of a loved one or something. This person lent money. Now, the person who's printing it was told that he cannot print a little something thanking the lender in the safer, because this would be ribis. In exchange, not only gets the loan back, he gets in this safer a whole thing. So what Reb Moshe tell him that he could do is he could put something and say that Hashem rewards people who do chesed with their money, and Hashem's brach is sent to such and such who lent funds for the thing. So in other words, you could say that Hashem gives brachas. You could mention him, but you're not allowed to put a special thank you. That in itself. So it's a fine line. So this is what we're saying. It's a very fine line between being a mensch. I mean, someone lends you money, you should say thank you, right? But we're going to see thank you. Could also, in other words, there's this fine line between being a mensch and showing some appreciation that someone helped you out, and interest.
Or actually, a benefit is another way of putting it. The other person cannot benefit because of the loan.
Correct.
Whichever way it is, covered,
Yeah.
money. Yeah.
Right. So that's right. But it's going to end up being this fine line. So too, the lender, the guy who lends the money, has to be careful about this concept of verbal ribis. Could go in for an example. Give an example. He says to the guy who he lent the money to, let me know such and such comes from such and such place. Now, why is he asking him? Right?
He's the port master.
Yeah.
And he knows when the boats are coming.
Okay, so if he's, again, as we said, anything that would have normally happened is not a problem. So if this guy happens to be the watchman of the city, and you would always ask him that question, regardless, so there's no problem. But even though you're not troubling him, it's not like you said to the guy, do me a favor and plow my field, right? And he works for a week, hard physical labor. All he's got to do is make a phone call. You're not really bothering him. It's just to say something. So it depends. If this is not the kind of thing you're accustomed to do beforehand, so you gave a very good example. If he was the port master and he's the guy that everyone asks, so then everyone asks him. That's part of his job. It's got nothing to do with the loan. But if this person, you would not ask him to do this favor for you, and now what's happening is essentially it's because of the loan that you feel it's love. I can give him instructions. Because he's subservient to me because he owes me money. Then harizeh ribis. This is ribis. This is interest. Now the im timer, and if you're gonna ask, why can't I make him work for me? Why not? Because Haksiv, we have a posuk in Mishlei that says, Eved loivel ishmalva. The guy who owes money is like a servant to the creditor. So let him be my servant. So he's saying, no. Zeo eno elo lo inyan shenof b'neihem din devarim. This verse, this posuk, is referring to someone he didn't pay. They got to court, and then it was like this. They have a dispute about which court to go to. Vaima Malva, the guy who wants to collect the loan, is not satisfied with the local court. Local court, it's a hick town, and they're not, I mean, they're used to dealing with simple, straightforward cases, but this is a doozy. This needs people who really understand contracts and all the clauses. So he says, "Neilcha based in a gadol ladun sham." Let's go to the great based in. Right? I mean, even the Sanhedrin's point. But in other words, I want to go to a more significant court. Well, ladun kan. He says, "No, I want to hear." So the guy who borrowed the money has to go to the place that the person who lent the money wants to go. But if it's reversed, the malva, the guy who's owed the money, doesn't have to go to another place. In this respect, mishum shnemar, it's because of this specific detail. The verse says, "Ebed loy l'shmalva." The person who owes the money is like a servant to the one who's owed the money. Right?
Yeah, but
So
which jurisdiction to go to?
that's right. That's right. I will just mention though, not loans. It's often the other way around. If it's a business dispute and not a loan, then the person who's being summoned has the choice of based in. Just interesting.
If it's a business, right? But here you're saying it's in.
But
Is
here
it
a
in
loan. We're
the
talking about loans.
star or
Yeah.
is it not in the star? It's not in the star.
Yeah. Okay. Now, let's talk about something else. We're going to slightly different case. We're going to discuss something that's called Toivas Hana. Toivas Hana can mean a lot of things. So we'll give a very simple example. Toivas Hana. So the guy lent me money, and now I start going to his supermarket. Now I'm not paying him an extra that I would have paid otherwise. I'm not different to any other customer, but I didn't go to his store beforehand, so I'm not paying anything extra. But he does have a certain Tavis Hanovel loose translators a benefit of gratitude. Okay, so we're getting something, but it's not like we said before, you get the loan for a greater time or a greater amount. It's not, we're giving you honor that you never got before. There's really nothing giving up. If I have to buy orange juice anyway, I'm buying orange juice anyway. I'm not especially buying orange juice because you gave me the loan. I need to buy orange juice. I bought it from your store. So let's talk about that. There's this kinds of things. In other words, when is it considered a financial value? Okay. Number 10. Philo Toivus Hano. She'ena Mammon. So this Toivus Hano, again, we'll loosely translate, as we said, this benefit of gratitude. It's not financial. There's no true financial value to it. It's forbidden for the lender to benefit from the borrower. Good going. He's going to give an example that's forbidden. Hamalva hubal malacha. The lender is a tradesman of some sort. He's a laborer or something. But loiva hazeh eine darkam litain loy malacha b'pam ach. And the borrower does not normally hire him. Okay, so let's make it. The guy lent the money is an electrician. The borrower, I've called electrician before to my house, but I never called this guy. I always called someone else. Rak ata. Only now, and why am I doing it? Machmas shilavol, because he lent me money. I feel like I should support his business because he lent me money. So right to say so malachtai. That's why I want to provide him with work. Also, it's prohibited. Now, again, this is a fine line because I'm not paying him any more than I would have paid someone else. I need an electrician now. I need someone to wire up. I know I'm going to put a new light fitting. I'm going to pay someone anyway. But since he's benefiting because he only got the work because he gave the loan, I wouldn't have hired him otherwise. Then that's a problem. Now, if it was a stipulation of the loan, right, he says, I'm lending you on the money on condition that when you need an electrician, you hire me. That's biblical ribbis. That's derisa. That's real interest. If it wasn't a stipulation, but I just hire him anyway because you lent me the money, then it's rabbinic. It's rabbinic. All right. Let's move on. And again, it's a fine line because sometimes, I didn't hire him before because I didn't know about him. He lent me money, But anyway, 11.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
it seems like it would be rude once the guy you established a relationship, even though it was a borrower and lender, and he lent you money, and now you need a plumber to Dafka go through another plumber that you've been using before and not use him. It's kind of rude. It's like not hakar. I mean, you're supposed to do hakar satov, even though it's not supposed to be.
Well, this is why at the beginning I said there's a fine line. So over here, where I always called a different plumber before, I'm not sure that's going to be so much an issue. Everyone understands I had this plumber, and this is, there's a thing called ribbis. Where it gets curly is what if I've never called a plumber before in this town? Then it can look, it's a very fine line. So if everyone's a religious Jew and if they're somewhat educated in the halachas, people understand. When they're not, and it is, it is a very fine line because at the end of the day, we said it's even words. At the end of the day, Shem should bless people. They shouldn't need to borrow money, but if they do need to borrow, they should be blessed with many places they get it from. But sometimes people are in a situation where people didn't want to lend them money. They didn't, and people they really thought would help them don't help them. And along comes some guy, and he helps him out, but just because he's stuck, interest free, and it's only natural. The person's going to feel real appreciation, and he's going to want to thank him, and he's going to want to say good Shabbos to him, and he's going to want to be nice to him. So the question is, what is the motivation? If it's because of the loan, it becomes problematic. If it's because, in other words, why do I say good Shabbos to him now? Because of the loan, it's problematic. If it's because, though, I discovered he's a nice guy. I didn't say good Shabbos to him because I didn't really know him. And now I see he's the nice guy. He's a Baal Chesed. He has good midas. And I want to be friends with a nice guy. So then it's something else. It might still not look good, and that could also be a factor. But at the end of the day, the thing here is, what's the motivation? What's the motivation? If a person feels, oh, I have to hire him because he lent me money, that's service. If the motivation is, I've never hired a plumber electrician before. I don't really know anyone in this town. Oh, I see this guy's an honest guy. Probably he's honest, is an honest plumber too. Well, that might be something different. But it's so what's motivating these decisions? Okay, the next halacha.
Does a person have to
Yeah.
worry about Marcheshvan, how it looks to other people also?
Yeah, well, yes, we do. Now, so we should try and minimize things that are in public. Also, a lot of people might not know that I borrowed money. I walk over someone and say good Shabbos. Who knows the way, So if as long as I know that I have the right motivations, maybe could be I need to tell him. By the way, I'm not saying good Shabbos because of the loan. I'm saying good Shabbos because I found out you're a nice guy. Didn't know you before. Maybe you have to say it, but quietly to him. But no one else knows. I mean, you don't normally put up a big sign. Someone lends you money. So no one's the wiser. So other people, it may not be a factor. However, sometimes it could. It depends on the circumstances. So there's lots of fine lines. So what we're doing is general principles, and people have to, if they have a situation not sure about, they should ask their rabbi that they normally ask their questions to. So number 11, we're going to start with another situation. It's called a saw for a saw. Saw is a measurement, but it means like this. Let's say today I borrow a dozen eggs. And the eggs that you lent me, you bought for $2. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? But anyway, $2. So essentially, I owe you a dozen eggs. And when I go to the store next week, they've gone up to $2.50. So there's two ways that I could borrow the eggs from you. One is $2 worth of eggs, whatever that happens to be in the day I pay it back. It could be I've just borrowed $2. I took it in the form of eggs. I might pay it back in cash or in the form of eggs, but I essentially owe you $2. But if I owe you a dozen eggs and the value has changed, how does that affect this din? That's the question, and it doesn't have to be eggs. A saw for a saw for a saw. So in the Gemara, a saw is a rather large measure of grain or produce. So a person borrows a saw and he's going to pay back a saw. And the different types of the season, the prices fluctuate. So very probable that when he pays back, it's going to be at a different value. And this is what we're going to discuss now. When and if and how this can be a ribis, an interest issue. So number 11. Also, lahalves the echad, it's prohibited to lend someone a saw tavur, a saw or any other measurement of produce, with the understanding that he's going to bring the same measurement of, so I'm lending you 5 pounds and you're going to pay me back 5 pounds in return. A filo min b'mina, even if it's the same produce. Why? Why is that a problem? Because maybe in the meantime, the cost of this produce is going to go up. The nimsa, and it's going to come out. So I'm going to be returning more than I borrowed, and that is going to be an interest issue. Now, this is produce. We can lots of things. It could be foreign currency, right? That goes up and down. Okay, so we're going to discuss when it is allowed and not allowed. So generally speaking, it's problematic. So what should you do? Yasen domim. You should convert the loan to money. right? So I'm borrowing $10 worth of produce. Then she'im tisyaka tavur li'itein lo rakadamim. So if the price goes up, instead of paying the £10, I pay $10 worth. It's only £9 I give back, but I borrowed. We converted to a $10 loan, and I pay back $10. Okay, that's one way to do it. Now there's another exception. If I already own even a small amount of it, I'm allowed to borrow even more and pay back the same amount. So let's say for an example, I've got apples at home, but we're at work, so I borrowed an apple. So we don't have this issue of the price of apples fluctuating because I already own an apple. So then it's not an issue. So that will be one exception to the problem. Another exception. This thing, whatever it happens to be, this produce, has a set marketplace, a set market price, at least for the duration of the loan, right? So maybe we're buying a wholesale amounts, and the grain, the produce for the next month, we've got a market price for the season. The mutter luvois, and I can borrow produce and pay back produce. Even though I don't have any, there's no problem because I'm going to get for the same market price, and there's not going to be this issue of fluctuation. Now, so that will be another exception. Now, all of this we're talking about is when I'm paying back the same thing I borrowed. I took 10 pounds of potatoes, I'm paying back 10 pounds of potatoes. But if it's not the same thing, going for example, I borrowed a saw of wheat, I'm going to pay back a saw of millet. This is never allowed, even with the exception we said before. Even if it's the same price. And I have the millet already. It's a problem because all of this is really considered. This is extremely problematic. Now, you can barter, right? You can say, I'm going to take this wheat and I'm going to give you millet. It's the same, similar value. It's about, even if I don't have it here right now, I have to go home and get it. But as a loan is problematic. Now, this, by the way, if we're talking about significant amounts, so maybe I shouldn't have said 10 pounds of potatoes or a dozen eggs. Now, we did have, with this bird flu, not so, what was it, a year ago or something, all of a sudden egg prices jumped drastically. But normally, even if the price fluctuates, it doesn't fluctuate too much. So if we're dealing with small amounts and therefore a very small price fluctuation, people don't normally care about that. People, it's not something that people aren't worried. It's today it's $1.50 and tomorrow's $1.52. People, it's $1.50. No one's really worried about that so much. So, but Dava cotton, if it's a small item, a loaf of bread, in which the standard ups and downs, fluctuation of the price, no one really cares. No one's particular about this small fluctuations. This is always allowed. And therefore, a lady can lend a loaf of bread to a friend. Again, we just use loaf bread as an example. It's a basic thing. People go, you get another loaf of bread. It may not be the exact same price, but it's really it's never going to be too significantly different. So that's that. All right. Now we're going to discuss collateral. Now collateral, mashkin, what's it called? There's different types of mashkin, different types. So let's say, for an example, I remember when I was a kid, we ran out of gas somewhere, right? And this is, I don't think there were ATMs even. I was a little kid. I don't think we even had ATMs. And I remember, my father walked to the gas station, and he came back. We waited in the car, my mother with the kids, and he came back with a jerry can. So what happened was, it was a weekend, so he couldn't even go to the bank to withdraw money. Right, in those days, before they had ATMs, that's it. You could only go Monday to Friday, 9 to 4. And he left his watch. So my father left the watch. And in those days, it wasn't like those days, whoever had the gas station, that was his business. It wasn't like these big chains and high school kids and different things working there. Left his watch and told him to come back tomorrow. And so he went the next day after going to the bank, paid the money, got his watch back. Right. So sometimes people, they'll lend you money if you give them something of value to ensure you're going to pay. And if not, they get to keep it, or at least the worth of the loan. Right? That's a basic mashkin. We'll loosely translate as collateral. However, sometimes the collateral could potentially be used. So let's say, for example, the guy says, I'll give you possession, I'll give you the keys to my holiday house. So I'll pay back the loan. So the question is, can this guy who lent the money, can he start, going every second weekend off to the holiday house and make use of it? When can you use it? When can you not use it? Or if you do use it, you have to take a deduction of the loan. This is going to be the issues we're going to discuss in this part. Okay, number 12. Hamalve mois al mashkin. He lends money against collateral. And the type of collateral we're talking about is a bias or a soda. It's a house or a field, a mokim-based knesses, or it's his seat in the shul. Some shuls, it's expensive seats. And what happens is follows. The malva yikach is a payas mamashkin. The malva, the person who lends the money, he gets, literally the payas means the fruits of the mashkin. So in other words, I'm gaining out of it. I'm living in the house. I'm harvesting the fruit of the field. I'm using the seat in the shul. Whatever it happens to be, I'm getting benefit. So what do you have to do? You have to do it in a way that you take deduction off the loan. Because if you're getting this benefit free of charge, and the guy's going to pay you back the full loan amount, that's ribas. So you have to deduct something. The meaning, you knock off a certain amount from the loan. Now, how do you do it? The cleanest way to do it is, okay, let's say the duration of the loan is 10 years, and I've got the holiday house for 10 years. Each year, I'm knocking a tenth. Okay, you can pay back the, or whatever it happens to be. So essentially, what I'm doing is I'm paying, the way it comes out is not interest on the loan. I'm paying rent for the use of the property. Okay, I've got the property in case he defaults on the loan. If he defaults in the meantime, he goes, whatever, so I get the property. However, if in the meantime while I'm using it, I'm paying him rent. Instead of putting it in his hand, I'm using this, it's knocking off the loan, knocking off the repayments. So I'm paying him rent. Now, vafilo schirus shava yoisa mama shikasa b'neim. Even if the actual value of the rent is more than our agreed upon rent, right? I mean, it could be on the open market. You Airbnb this holiday house, you'll make 15,000 a year. And I'm saying, we agreed, I'm going to knock 10,000 a year off the rent. Mutter, this is permitted. One thing I can't do, though, if I could rent out the holiday house and make money out of it and knock it off the rent, but I can't rent it back to the guy who owns it. Right? That's real interest. Well, the truth is, if he's really renting, it's not interest. But what'll happen is this will be a loophole. I'll tell someone, imagine, listen to this loophole. This is what we want to avoid. The guy will say, okay, we all understand that I'm lending $100,000 and I want you to pay me back $200,000. But we can't say it outright. So I say, you know what? I'll lend you $100,000 and I'm taking your house as collateral. Are you going to be homeless? I'll do you a favor. I'll rent your house back to you for whatever. So over the 10-year duration of the loan, I end up getting double my money back. It could potentially be a way that people could charge interest, and the lender understands interest, the borrower understands interest, but they're doing it in a way that they getting away with it. So therefore, this arrangement is rabbinically forbidden. They cannot rent it back to him. Now, v'oid yesh b'inyan mishkanta harbe chilukei dinim. Again, this is the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, it's the abridged code of Jewish law. And he's telling us there are many other specific laws about this type of arrangement of lending collateral. And you shouldn't do it, Kiyam, unless you consult a rabbinic authority. So if you're ever going to go into such an arrangement as either the borrower or the lender, you need to discuss with someone who's familiar with the halachas and make sure that the arrangement you're making is a kosher arrangement. He's given a general principle, but there's many specifics because we need to avoid interest. We need to avoid the appearance of interest, and we also have certain things that are rabbinically forbidden to avoid people setting up the situation that taking de facto interest. Okay. Number 13. There's an object that has a known market price. You're not allowed to charge more. Can't charge extra above the market price in exchange for credit. Right? This object, the market price is $100. You want to pay in a month? $120. Can't do that. If it has a set market price. However, something doesn't have a set market price. Some stores sell it for this, some stores sell it for that. Then even though if right now you would pay me the money, I would take less for it. I would take $100. But since I'm giving you credit, so now I'm charging a little extra. I'm charging 120. Mutter, it's allowed. It's allowed. As long as I'm not charging much more. Right? What's considered too much? So in other words, I can if there's a set market price, then I can't charge more for credit. I could still possibly give a discount below the market price for cash payments and charge the market price for credit. But that's when there's a set market price. If there's no set market price, which I imagine on most things today, I think you go to various stores, you'll see that all kinds of things. Then I could charge more, as long as not too much more. Now, what's too much more? It's written in a sefer called Chavas Das. The Hainu Shusa Yosa. This if I charge 1/6 or more in exchange for the credit. That's when it becomes recognizable to everyone. That he's charging more for extending credit. Now, the gamim loim alo harbe. Now, if I don't charge much more, but you say it publicly. If you give me the money now, I'll sell it to you for 10. But if you get on credit, you have to pay me 11. Asa. Right? So you have to keep it in you can't say it outright. It has to be in your mind when you negotiate the price. So you work out the terms as you negotiate the price. Likewise, if it's also the purchaser, the purchaser buys at a high price on credit, okay, with the intention of selling it immediately at a loss. So that he can just have some money in his hands. Came also, this is also forbidden. Right? In other words, I say to a guy, okay, it's $100 worth of produce. Tell him, I'll give you 110. And I'm going to go sell it for 100. Why? Because I just need $100. So this is just another way of borrowing $100 from him while paying 110. So it's also not allowed. Okay, let's squeeze in one more. So the next few are going to be things that are borderline but are permitted. So number 14. I have a note of debt from someone. Yankel owes me $100. I'm allowed to sell it to someone else for less. Yankel owes me $100. I'll sell it to someone, my friend, for $90. He's giving me 90, he's going to get 100. It's not a problem. But Philokainim is manaproin. I can even do this before the loan is due. So that's not an interest issue. And the seller writes to the purchaser, I'm selling you this contract, this promissory note. And you acquire any lien that's in it. And the responsibility, if the borrower defaults, now goes on to the purchaser. Only the responsibility that originates in the seller could go in sheshta prua kadoma. like if it was paid or not. In other words, I sell it, I have no problem. The guy defaults, nothing to do with me. Not my problem. The only problem is if it was a problem with me to start with. For an example, the guy already paid the loan, and I'm selling the promissory note. They go to based in, he shows him receipt. I paid it. Because and just as you right, so that's the problem. Now, just as you can sell to another person at a discount, I could even sell it to the borrower at a discount. In other words, I could say to the guy, you owe me $100 in 6 months. Okay. I'm gonna sell this loan to someone for $90. You want to buy it for $90? I only need the cash now. I can do that also. So these things are allowed. All right. So we probably the next one's a long one. Stop here then. Any questions? All right. All right. So today is the yahrzeit of Rachel Amenu, our matriarch Rachel. So it's anyway.
I can
So
tell
hopefully some
Mama Rachel.
yeah.
an
Her
interesting
prayers should bring blessings into the world.
Amen. There was some disturbances by the caver, I know, the last few days. I don't know from where or when, but yep, need a lot of tefillas.
Yep.
I had an interesting story that happened to me. When we went to Eretz Israel on one of our trips, I only went like 3 or 4 times maybe. And when we were by Rachel Imenu's kever, I had my video camera going. And I didn't hear any, like there was mild, coming from the ladies' side, it was mild, talking, davening, just very, very mild. And the same thing by the men's side, it was davening, but it was very, very quiet. And when we got home and listened to the tapes, you could hear a woman moaning and crying in the background. It was not there when we recorded it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. All right.
Mama Rachel.
Yeah. Wish everyone a wonderful week.
Amen.
And we'll see
You
everyone
too,
next week,
Rebbe.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Have a great week, everybody.
You too.